Yeah, I'm excited about the lesson. Yeah, I love it. Love it, love it. Hi, I'm Jeremy Doublestein, and welcome to The Third Ring, where we share the story behind the story. On this episode of The Third Ring, we're gonna look at a story from a very different perspective. In fact, it's almost the opposite narrative viewpoint from our typical wedding films. How is that, you ask? Well, Michael and Shayzon's story picks up almost exactly 14 years after they said I do. Since the interview for most of our wedding films takes place before the marriage actually starts, it has a very premarital perspective. Michael and Shayzon's story isn't a wedding film. It's a vow renewal film, or maybe a better way to look at it is a marriage film. There are hundreds of reasons to love this story, but the one reason that I like the best is the fact that it underscores some of the theories that we have about the importance of storytelling and how it relates to building a strong marriage. My job as a storyteller and a filmmaker is to find that one visual element that sort of undergirds the emotional theme of the story. For Michael and Shayzon, that theme stood out very strongly even during their interview. It was a statement that Michael would use repeatedly during their courtship and early years of marriage, where he talked about drawing a line in the sand.
You have to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, I'm not going to cross this, and this is it. And that's it.
Michael's statement was essentially a rallying cry for the two of them to encourage change and help each other to grow. So we took that idea and kind of ran with it. When it was time to sit down and interview Shayzon, we began asking questions around this concept of drawing a line in the sand.
Every marriage has its ups and downs, but with the ups and downs, I think every time we come up even stronger, and we go higher and more determined.
At that point, we knew we had our theme, but we were trying to figure out how to visually incorporate it, and that's when we were handed a gift.
We'll have a sand ceremony where they will combine the sand that they actually collected 14 years ago on their honeymoon.
So now we had all the pieces working together. We had the idea of drawing a line in the sand and how it affected change in their relationship, and we had the visual element from their sand ceremony that really just tied everything together. And this is where we come full circle. As I mentioned before, the perspective of most of our couples is a premarital perspective. It's generally filled with hope and optimism and good things for the future. But what does it look like after 14 years of marriage? What does it look like after 2 kids and after duking out some very difficult circumstances? Shayzon does an amazing job of bridging the gap between the premarital perspective and the 14-year later perspective with a beautifully simple metaphor.
So I've seen him blossom into a man. I guess what I saw initial was the foundational aspects of manhood, I guess, and the skeletons of a good man. But I've seen that formulate and flourish over the past 14 years.
In marriages that are failing, you'll often hear statements like, "That's just not the person that I married." If you ask Shayzon and Michael, "Is this the same person you married?" the answer would be yes and no. Change is a part of any relationship, and it's an important part too. But what matters is where you draw that line in the sand. For them, it was a line of commitment. And when you go back to that line, change becomes a very positive thing rather than a negative one. So leave a comment below. We'd love to hear where you need to draw a line in the sand and how you think it will help affect the change in your relationships. Thanks, Michael and Shayzon, for sharing your story with us. It's a great reminder of how commitment helps make change a very positive thing in our relationships. I hope you enjoy their story.
I knew her ambitions and her dreams when we first got together. I said, hey, well, come on, let's go for it. And that's what we did. So here it is, fast forward 14 years later, and she's living her dreams. She's doing the things that she told me all those years ago on the phone that she wanted to do. I love my wife and love my life. And yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, we've made a good life for ourselves. So.